Yeah, so welcome to this year's finance training. Again, like the core officer training for anyone that was in that. This has been merged for societies and sports, as we are now the student activities department rather than separately. It'll be myself and Lewis who will be running this, and Dom will also be on the chat function. So if you do have any questions throughout, then it will be either Dom or Lewis that will reply to you. If anyone else from the student activities team is here and answering questions, then thank you. Ray has just messaged me. She is here too. I didn't know if she was here tonight, but Ray might reply to you as well. So yeah, the session format, take any notes that you have, ask any questions. You can speak to us at the end of the session if you want to stick around as well. And just relay any of this information back to your club or your society committee, because although it's primarily for you, there'll be some information that'll be handy to note for everyone. It will be fairly text heavy. It needs to be, unfortunately, so it's not the most fun thing for you to be involved in, but there's going to be some really important stuff, especially with some changes this year because of COVID-19 and how that is going to impact you all. So yeah, as I said, who are we? We're the student activities team, and we are responsible for helping you to lead the sports clubs and societies at Essex Uni. We do most of the boring admin stuff so that you don't have to. But like I said, you're heavily involved with the club and society finances, so there'll be some really important stuff to note down here. As I said, I'm Jack, so I'm one of these student activities coordinators, and then I will let Lewis quickly introduce himself as well.
Okay, thanks, Jack. Can you hear me? Little thumbs up, yep. Jack. Cool. I've been spending the last 15-20 minutes trying to get the audio sorted, so glad you can. Yeah, Jack's covered it all perfectly. This probably isn't. This may be a bit daunting when you first see some of the slides, but honestly, it is definitely something you all can do, and we're here to support you throughout the whole year, and especially during this next hour if you have any questions at all that you want to ask. So yeah, put it on the chat, email us later. Our contact details are at the bottom of every single slide. Yeah, and we're here to help. So hopefully we'll try and make this as fun as possible. But yeah, we'll be done within the hour. That is still with me. Sorry, just getting my script up. So yeah, hopefully we've got presidents and treasurers here from both sports clubs and societies, and we may also have other people that are involved within the finances of their club and society. So it could be a fundraising officer, a charity officer, anything like that. So you're all very welcome. Hopefully you will pick up some tips and learn a bit more about what your role entails during the year. There will be specific sections like this slide where we'll talk about individual roles, but it should all have some sort of benefit to your role. So we'll start with the presidents and treasurers, who primarily, between the two of you, have the responsibility for your club or society finances. Okay, you are going to be the ones that will sign off expenses. You are going to be the ones that probably have the most input and involvement within your club or society budget. So that could be the monitoring that budget throughout the year, whether you're overspent, whether you are realizing you're underspent and you've got things that you can still order, but also it's going to be things like when orders need to be made or when events are coming up. You're going to be the ones that essentially make the decisions as to what can go ahead because you're involved with the budget. A lot of what you do does come down to money, so you do have two very, very important roles. They're also probably the two best roles to put on your CV. They're really, really good transferable skills that you will develop during this year. So yeah, it will be good fun. Okay, starting off, some of you may have already been receiving this. They'll come through once a week, but each club and society will get a weekly finance report. This is a little bit like a bank statement, although it looks nothing like a bank statement. It will be a weekly update of what your club or society finances look like. So this, again, Jack mentioned earlier about it being text heavy. This is for you to refer back later, this screenshot. But essentially it's pointing at what each figure within your report means, and whether you need to be alarmed. Maybe you need to contact a member of staff and go, hang on, there's money being taken out that shouldn't be, or vice versa, you're expecting a charge to have come through and it's not yet appearing. It's really important you look at these every week, even if you look at it for a minute or two. It's just a quick check. Yes, I'm happy with all of that, or no, I'm not happy with that. I'm going to get in touch with myself or Jack or Dom or Ray or any of the team, and we'll be happy to explain what's going on. But yeah, in essence, this is something you should be aware of. Hopefully, if you haven't seen it already, you'll start to receive these emails very soon. And it's just good to really be able to be on top of these. So if a club member or society member asks you, oh, why can't we do this, or can we afford to do this, you know where your budgets are and where your finances are at the moment. So familiarize yourself with these. They will likely come through, that in previous years they've come through from the email address pete@essex.ac.uk. Sometimes it may come from a different staff member, but it is important that you don't just discard that straight away, and you do look at them each week. It's best once you get that first one through, maybe add that person who sent it to you to a safe sender list, so it doesn't just get put straight into your spam. And like I said, just a quick check each week should be enough. But if you are like some of us in the office, very thorough people, we like all the details and all the statistics, you may want to really look into that in depth. But yeah, just to make you aware of what this is, nothing too scary.
And just a quick note on your weekly finance reports. I don't know whether this is being asked in the chat. I can't see the chat for some reason. But if anyone's asking about why they're coming through blank at the moment, it's basically because the reports link up to a spreadsheet, and the spreadsheet is still in the process of being created. There has to be a new one for every year, and that's in the process of being created at the moment. So it will just send through blank ones for a while, but we're hoping to have that fixed by next week. So your next one might be blank, but the one after that should be clear. Cool. So what's in your account? This is a society side of things, because although we're merging, some of the processes are still a little bit different for clubs and societies. So you get your membership funds. So when people buy a membership for your society, that money after the VAT has been deducted will display as part of your weekly finance report. Any other funds that you might have, as it says, we usually come from two sources. So that's if you've done an event and the money has been paid in, or the money comes from ticket sales through the website. So if you put on a show or a concert and people buy tickets through the website, then that'll come through there. External organizations can sometimes make donations or sponsorships to your society, but especially with sponsorships, make sure you speak to us before you arrange that or you sign any contract. We'll go through that a little bit more in detail as well later on, but make sure you come to us before you do that. As it says down at the bottom as well, unlike before, spending your society money is a little more relaxed now. Before, so I think it was in the middle of last year, it kind of changed and we gave you some updates on that. But before that point, any income that came from your membership funds had to be spent solely on things that could benefit all members. So not all members had to take advantage of whatever you were offering, but it had to be that all members could benefit from it if they wanted to. However, it's not the case because your funds have kind of all merged into one now. And the way that we process your expense forms, we put a certain code when you give us a form, and now that all comes from one place, so it's a little bit more relaxed now. However, as it says, we do still strongly recommend that all of your purchases that you make are for the benefit of everyone, or at least everyone can benefit from. So we don't really want to see societies buying pizza for just your exec members at your exec committee, because that's not what people have paid membership funds for. But I'm sure none of you would do that anyway. And as it says there, this comes up again later, but your members can request to access a detailed breakdown of your finances at any time. So it's in your best interest anyway to spend it on things that can benefit everyone, because someone is going to put a complaint in if they see that you've spent money on pizza for your exec committee, and that wasn't approved or noted to anyone.
Okay, yeah, so this is sport specific. We haven't actually released the budgets for the 2020-21 academic year, obviously because of the circumstances going on in the world. All our processes and everything is a little bit delayed. He's on the call, but I don't want to put him on the spot. Dom did say these would be ready towards the end of September, and we are still in September, so he's kept his word. this is what your budget will look like. We tried to simplify it over the years into your club budget, which is what is allocated to you from the Students' Union based on the university grant that we get and we allocate to you. And then the other half of that is essentially your savings. So it's your non-budget fund. So there's two funds for sports clubs, it's budget and non-budget. Your budget fund has to be spent on basically what you requested. So if you requested £250 for equipment or £175 as it says in this example, you're expected to spend that money on equipment. During the year you may be able to reallocate it if there's a just reason, but we do allocate you this money specifically because you have said you needed it. Your savings is pretty much the same as what Jack described for societies. It is there to be spent on something that will benefit your sports club as a whole. So it will be maybe some extra coaching, some new equipment that wasn't in your budget, or some facility hire. It could be anything that will benefit all of your members rather than just some of them. But again, this screenshot is just to be looked at in your own time, to be reviewed, and it will, once you've zoomed in, you will be able to see what each section means and how it relates to your club. We are, as it says at the bottom, hoping to have these ready for tomorrow, so please keep your emails open. And again, always get in touch if you've got any questions about those. Okay, so just touched on it there. So you have two accounts within a sports club. We'll focus on the budgeted account for now. This is the money that we give you as a students' union that comes to us from the university. It is allocated to you, as I've said, for specific things. However, if you do not spend it, we have to give it back to the university. Okay, there's no rollover with these accounts. By the end of the year, it's normally, obviously it's slightly different this year, but it's normally around sort of May, June, maybe even into July, where we have to make the decisions about how much money will go back to the university. So hopefully the idea is all clubs have requested this money because they need it, and hopefully you will spend it during the year. We understand the circumstances this year are different, and you may have things cancelled or you may have unexpected costs, and of course we can work with you to try and get through those. But yeah, the budget account really is quite straightforward. We give you money because you need it. If you don't spend it, you have to give it back. Simple as that. Your non-budget one does have a lot more flexibility, and this can be topped up in various ways. So we call it the non-budget account. Quite a few people call it their savings. It does tend to work as a savings account, because if you don't spend this money during one academic year, you can use it the next academic year, the year after. It will just stay with you until you've spent it. Okay. If you charge a membership fee within a sports club, it will go into there. And also you can raise money, as Jack's touched on, with sponsorship, donations, things like that. This money will go into these accounts unless they've been fundraised for a specific project such as Click or anything like that, which we can talk about later. But yeah, it's a really, really good way of making sure your members can do everything you want and making sure you as a club can achieve what you want. So if you haven't quite got enough money, bring in some revenue through memberships, through some fundraising, and it will stay with your sports club. That's really important. We do have some people question each year, look, we haven't spent this money. As long as it's in your non-budgeted account, it will stay with you. There's a couple of little things. Obviously, it can't be spent on alcohol or anything illegal. And we do generally use the rule of thumb, as long as it benefits everyone, it's okay.
Cool. So this kind of touches on what Lewis just said, but any money that your society or club has cannot be used to purchase alcohol. Sometimes, like on a really rare occasion, there can be a few exceptions made, but they have to be authorised by us, obviously. So as it says there, if your society's aims and objectives was to focus around discovering and trying different types of gin or beer, then when the society was formed, we'd probably expect that that's the type of thing you're going to need money for, so we may be able to authorise that. Another good example is like the Edge Hotel Society. Obviously, their society's aims and objectives are around the hospitality industry. Yeah, that's something that sometimes if they have an event, we'll authorise that. But generally, it's a no to things like alcohol. And again, any illegal substances cannot be purchased with your money. Pretty much a given. And just be aware as well that we have the right to reject any invoice or expense claims. So if you're ever unsure whether something is going to get approved and you don't want to spend your money on it and then maybe not get your money back, then just check with us first whether we will definitely reimburse that money to you, so we can give you clarity on that. So this one's a little bit tricky with wording sometimes, but I put a couple of examples there to help out. So all income and expenses must go through the student union's official bank account. So never offset your expenses against your income and then pay in the difference. The reason for that, it avoids VAT and therefore would be illegal. The one exception is if you have raised money for charity. So I know it's confusing because the SU is a charity, but if you're fundraising for your own society or your own club, then that does not count within the terms that we have. But if it is for charity, then you can claim the money back in from the from what you have raised. So the examples are below to help clear that up a little bit. So if you were to raise £100 for your society or club through a bake sale, and that was just for your own society or club needs, but you paid £20 of your own money towards the ingredients, then you would need to pay in all of the £100 before claiming expenses back. So you can't take the £20 out of the £100 raised and then only pay £80 in. However, like I said, if you raised £100 for the charity Mind through a bake sale, but again you paid £20 of your own money towards the ingredients, then you can take that £20 directly from the money raised and then pay the remaining £80 off to charity. I hope that makes sense. So yeah, essentially, if you're doing it on the squares, for example, and you've got a pot of money and that adds up to about £100 and that was for charity, then you can take £20 directly out of that pot and then pay the other £80 in. But if it was a fundraiser for your society or club, then you can't do that. It's also illegal, this is a really important part, for a society or club to open a separate bank account or for any member to pay any society money into their own account. If the society or club, does this, then there can be different consequences faced. It can potentially face instant closure. We don't really want to go down that route. So just remember that you cannot open your own separate bank account. But if your society, some of the wording is still only society. This is obviously applies for everyone. If your society or club raises money for charity, then you can either claim, like I said, you can claim the expenses from your non-budgeted. If you want to just pay the whole amount straight off to charity, then you can claim the expenses from your non-budgeted funds, or I guess with sports from your savings, as long as your members agree to that, or deduct, as I said, the amount from the money raised and then pay the remainder in. If you're making payments to charities, then you need to use the RAG form or the RAG account. If it's using the RAG account, then our finance team will do that for you. But the money, when paid in, if it's like through a bank transfer, for example, then you'll need to send SU Finance an email, for example, to say, we've just paid £80 in, it needs to go into this society or club's funds and then be paid off out to the charity, and then you give the details of the charity. The reason for that is because the SU, as I said, is a registered charity as well, so we can't make direct payments to other charities. So if you were to give a mate a fiver that you owed them, we can't do that with other charities. So how can a budget be helpful? So it's not a compulsory thing to do, but we have always done it in societies, and we think it obviously be a good thing for clubs to do as well. But we suggest maybe making a budget for yourselves, and some of the reasons for that. So prioritization framework. So it means that at the beginning of the year, you can set out all of your planned events, a little bit like what sports have there with their budget form already. But you can set out your planned events and then prioritize where you think you're going to want your money to go. So it means all of your members of your society and your club can have a clear idea of what budget different events are going to have. So especially if you have societies where certain exec members will take the lead on certain events, then they're going to have a clearer idea of how much money they have to work with. It can also allow you to plan for any events where you expect to get income from as well. We don't suggest including that in your budget plan, but you can, like I said, you can start to plan how much you're going to raise from them. Funding as well, member contributions, fundraising, crowdfunding. Setting this all out in a budget plan is going to allow you to establish how much money you want to raise in order to throughout the year, in order to maximise the potential of events. So if you know you need to raise £1,000 from a certain event to put the next event on, then you're going to sort of be a little bit more thrifty with your money and make sure you've got everything you need in place to make that event really great, and then to get as many ticket sales as possible.
Cool. So VAT actually might be a new concept to some of you. It might be something you've just heard mentioned sort of when you're out and about, but it does play quite an important role in your sports club and society finances. There is a slight difference. Again, these do get confusing, so I'm glad we're recording it so you can look back later, but there is a slight difference between some sports club and society VAT related activities. So on the income you receive, within a society, for example, your membership may be £5, you would then receive £4.17, and HMRC would take 83 pence from you. Similarly with event tickets and cake sales, Jack mentioned the examples earlier with how these will be taken, but it's very, very important that you're aware of these. It says there you can claim back any VAT you pay when you're buying goods or paying for travel, but only if you ask for a VAT receipt when you pay. Most providers, Tesco there as an example, will be happy to give you one if required. There's a little formula there to calculate VAT if you're not sure what it is. To calculate the VAT, just divide the figure by 1.2. So do try and familiarise yourself with these bits and pieces. We'll talk about them in more detail. But yeah, this is one of the things we do get asked about a lot, is VAT. Sports clubs specifically. Sorry, actually, Jack, sorry, you go on to the next slide. I'll talk about it then. But within clubs, we do have VAT questions come up a lot, so there's no problem at all asking. We'll happily sit down with you at any time. So yeah, we'll talk about claiming expenses again. You can claim them. We say at any time, but quite often there is a deadline for claiming an expense back. So within sports clubs, we normally say within a month of the event or the expense occurring, the expense needs to be reclaimed by. And we'll touch on it. Someone's mentioned in the chat, we do have a new process which should reduce a lot of the usage of cash, and expenses can now be claimed online via bank transfer, which should be really, really good. It should make a massive difference. But as a treasurer, as a president, you can also sign off these expense forms. You are there to authorise the expense. The slightly different one is you cannot authorise your own expense. So the president could not go down to Tesco and buy £20 worth of ingredients and then sign that expense off themselves and go and reclaim £20 from the SU reception. It does need, obviously that is an element, there's a risk of fraud in that, and just to counteract that, we asked that the treasurer would sign off the president's expenses and vice versa. So it's a small thing, but it does happen where we do get expenses in the past have come through and just the president or the treasurer has tried to authorise their own, and it does cause a delay because we'll have to either send it back or check with someone else on the committee to ensure that they're happy with that. So yeah, just something to bear in mind. That is a useful bit of information. When you're reclaiming your expense forms, if it is still in cash at the SU reception, usual stuff, you'll need your student ID or some sort of proof of ID, as well as the authorised expense. Within the clubs, we'll do all the coding for you. So within a sports club, when authorising a sports club expense, rather, as a treasurer, we may ask, is this your budget or your non-budget account? That's all you need to do. It's just, yes, I'm happy with it, I'll sign it off. And there's a tick box or a section where we'll ask you, is this from your budget or your non-budget? If you don't tick that, it'll probably be up to one of us in the office to decide. And then it may be allocated to the slightly wrong account. It may have been charged to your savings when it shouldn't have been. So we do really insist that you take care when signing these off and make sure you are requesting they're taken from the right account, because although we can move money back at a later date, it does cause delays and you might lose out. So yeah, please ensure you are thorough when you sign off these expenses. there's Paddy, and new for 2020-21, we now have a online expense claim, which, yeah, it should be. Oh no, I've got ahead of myself. We're allowing clubs and societies to authorise expenses of up to £50 themselves, without the need for the previous 48-hour or 2 or 3 working day process that would rely on a staff member actually coming in to sign them off. So they are online. Those are the type forms that will be there for you to input all the details for the expense being claimed. There's sports, societies, and volunteering. Obviously, if you're doing a V-team project or anything like that, there are specific volunteering type forms that you need to go down to reclaim maybe a bus ticket or any expenses you incurred whilst volunteering. But that's probably quite a good idea. If you're a sports club member, just have a little click on that and maybe even look at it in the background while we're talking, or have a look at it later. And likewise with societies, to familiarise yourselves with those, because they are new. And just once yourself and the president or treasurer and everyone is happy with them, you can then start rolling those out to your members. And it should really tidy up the process and make things quicker and allow members to receive their money back much quicker than in previous years, which we know has caused a bit of a problem. So it will request a few details from you: your name, your Essex email, and obviously information about your expense claim, which you probably will need to provide proof of.
Just a quick note about that as well. The links that are there, there's also the last slide in this presentation. There is a link as well that will take you to the main resources page for clubs and societies, and the individual links are all posted on there as well. So you don't need to come back and try and find this presentation every time you want to go and get onto those pages.
Okay, so this is just a continuation of that. After the form has been completed, it will go through to our SU finance team, and you'll get a confirmation email to say it's all gone through okay. There is a system called DocuSign, which will be something the presidents and treasurers will use to approve the expense claim. Obviously, they will have the information you submitted, or the member submitted, the description of the expense, how much it was, that sort of stuff, why they are claiming it. And of course, it will be approved if you're happy to it, as long as you have, as long as it's less than £50, and of course, as long as you have £50 or more in your account. I imagine the finance team will be in contact with you if you don't have that amount, or if you're trying to make a payment. This goes for everything. If you're trying to make a payment that your club or society cannot afford, you will have contact made with you from either one of the team here in the student activities team, or it will be the SU finance team. If it's more than £50, then it will need one of us in the office as a secondary authorization. It should still work quicker than it has done in previous years, obviously with it being online. So yeah, it's one of those things that over a certain amount we will have to approve, but it should work quicker. And then once the DocuSign process is all done, the request goes back to finance to make the payment, or query it, or any further amendments will be made. But that's it in a nutshell. It will move quite quickly actually once the type form is completed, and we've done it in the office as well. The type form takes a matter of sort of a minute or two to complete. It's no problem at all. But yeah, check it out. Dom's put it on the chat as well, and Jack's mentioned the link where you can find it at a later date. But just even if you put in a couple of sort of test expense claims, it's worth a go. Maybe just let finance know that this is a test. But yeah. And yeah, finally for me, so our payments are made on a Wednesday, and this is the same for everything. So this is invoices, expense claims, any bank transfer payment made via BACS goes through on a Wednesday. So please do allow enough time for our finance team to process it. This is normally a Wednesday morning as well, first thing. So please don't do it last thing on a Tuesday night, or actually on the Wednesday morning itself, because unfortunately it won't be approved in time, and you'll have to wait the following week. So Monday lunchtime is really the deadline we were asking people to stick to get these sent in. Your weekly finance report will eventually update and have information about this transaction and how much it's been taken off. The only thing we'll say is sometimes they can be a week behind potentially. So don't be alarmed straight away if it has not come out the following week, I'm sure it will be listed on your report. This is a new process. It may have the odd hiccup, so please do bear with us. We have tested it and tried it, and it seems to work well. But if there's any problems, we will contact you, and likewise your members. If it's been a couple of weeks and they've not heard anything, by all means they can get in contact with us, and we can try it the old-fashioned way if that works better. But yeah, it should make a real difference this year, and we're looking forward to getting it going.
Cool. A bit about invoices. So they usually come from different scenarios where, such as like when societies or clubs want to hire like performers for events, or if a guest speaker provides an invoice to you or to us for like travel costs. They need to be pretty clear, just so it's just easy for us to sign off and for finance team to process. So they need to clearly state the bank details of whom the money will be provided to sent to, the date in which they provided a service, just so if finance need to check with us, then we can say yes, that event did happen, they were there on that day, and also a good description of what the service was. Because there are certain things that we can't process in terms of invoices. So we can't, for example, authorize an external speaker to come and give a talk. It's a little bit complicated and a bit confusing as to why sometimes, but the long and short is there's sometimes a reason why we might not be able to process an invoice. So it just needs to have that good description of what the service was. If you're ever unsure again, if an invoice is going to be signed off, then please do check with us first. Any invoice that states a foreign currency will usually be equivalent to the conversion rate as of the day that the finance team process the invoice. So it might be good if you've got someone coming from overseas. I know obviously I'm sure at the moment that won't be happening, but if ever there is a chance, there is a time when you have someone or like a performer that is coming from overseas to perform and they are asking for a fee, then it might be just good to let them know that the conversion rate and the money that they receive will be equivalent to what the conversion rate is as of the day that the finance team process it. We said this already, the finance team work on a Wednesday to Wednesday schedule. So again, like I said, I forgot to change that bit there. We went by Tuesday last week, but we realised that last year, we realised that sometimes didn't give enough time. So ignore the bit about Tuesdays there. It is Monday lunchtime that we do want invoices as well as expense forms to be submitted by the latest. And just a little one at the bottom. Just be wary of sending invoices or expense claims over busy periods or times where there might not be staff in. So like the winter break, obviously all staff here will leave on Christmas Eve and then come back on the 2nd of January, unless that's a weekend, and then it'll be the first Monday afterwards. And sometimes staff, especially over times like Christmas, will take a little bit extra holiday. So just be wary of handing in invoices and expense claims over times such as that, because it might not be quite as quick as in term time. Make sure to plan your events in as much time as possible so that we can deal with invoices in a good time. A lot of companies will provide invoices. Anyone can provide an invoice, even just myself as an individual. If I was to start, if I was to do a workshop with a group of people, I can provide my own invoice to people. Some companies will just be reluctant and will just try and give their bank details and just ask you to make a payment into that. But we want to have an invoice just so that we have a paper trail of all of our records as well, so that we are definitely sure that we have paid something and that we have signed a payment off as well. Obviously, this also means that you don't have to make large payments from your own personal bank account. We do have some instances where students have paid, up to a couple of £1,000 from their own money at times before, and then have been sort of on our backs to get the money back, which obviously they would be. But again, with time constraints, sometimes we can't get the money back as quickly as they would like it to come back. So we want to avoid things like that. So try and get an invoice to us from a company wherever possible. A little example again, if you're planning a trip to Roller World, make sure that you plan your event in as far advance as possible as you can, so that you can ask them to get an invoice over to us, and then we can get that paid. A company can give you an invoice, or you can just give either the SU Socks or Blades Essex email addresses to them as well, so they can send it directly to us if needs be. Yeah, so really simple one, but often this comes in wrong sometimes. Just make sure the bill to address is always billed to the University of Essex Students' Union, and obviously make sure you tell a company that as well. They'll often send an invoice to you or to us that has got like your society or your club name on them, and we can't process that. And usually any changes, unless they're really minor changes, any changes we make, we like to then get approval from the company as well. So that takes up more time. So just make sure the bill to address is as it says on the screen there. External speakers, as I said, the SU cannot pay fees to external speakers. You can pay their travel costs, the cost of a meal, which excludes alcohol, and the cost of any printing material. So if they have certain leaflets or flyers or scripts that they want to print out for themselves, then you can pay that, but you cannot pay for their time, essentially. If your member of your society or club collects an external speaker by car, then petrol costs can be refunded at a rate of 25 pence per mile. Just provide a screenshot of the calculated distance. There's a link at the bottom there, but if you just type into Google AA route planner, then you can just put in the details of where you picked the external speaker up from and then back to campus, and then you can use those figures to calculate the cost of petrol or diesel or whatever it is that you're doing to collect them.
Okay, sponsorship. Obviously, we talked about if you haven't got enough money within your club or society, getting sponsorship is a fantastic way of doing something about that. Unfortunately, there are a few people you cannot be sponsored from. Essentially, anything that conflicts with the Students' Union, maybe as a competitor, so bars, coffee shops, that sort of stuff, where we have a direct competitor on campus. And additionally, that will be the same with university venues, so gyms, and again, restaurants, bars, that sort of stuff. That does make it potentially a little bit more difficult to find sponsors, but it's very important that we tell you this straight away, and you don't spend your time speaking to bars, restaurants, competitors, and then last minute at the very last stage, we just want to get it signed off by us. We say, unfortunately, you can't do that. It's a competitor. So yeah, it's really important you're aware of that straight away. If you're not sure about who can sponsor you, by all means, just ask us. But any sponsorship before it is agreed, it's basically invalid until it is authorised by the Students' Union, activities team, and the finance director at the SU. So you can. Best practice, I'd say, is if you're having a conversation with an organisation that wants to sponsor you or is interested, quick email to one of us. Look, XYZ is interested in sponsoring us. Can we do it? Yes or no? And then you can do all the proceedings. And then we have sponsorship proposals and everything to give you that documentation to pass over, or for you to edit to personalise more towards your club and society, to then give to that organisation and say, is this something you're interested in? So we really want to work with you. We will help you along with it if there's anything you're not sure about. But yeah, it's really important that you know that unfortunately any direct competitors of SU and university venues can't be allowed. But also you must have approval before these agreements are authorised. You must have authorisation before these agreements are finalised. There could be a number of reasons. You could be agreeing to a terrible deal. You could be agreeing to sponsorship with an organisation that is either not trustworthy or maybe at risk of sort of default or anything like that. So there's loads of reasons why we do it, and we want to just see the best for all our club and societies. So please do just get in touch if you're looking to arrange sponsorship. One thing I will mention, actually, obviously you have sponsorships and donations, which are ways of fundraising. Sponsorships do incur VAT, donations do not. So if you're speaking to a company, it's more than likely they will want to sponsor you because they will get something in return, whether that's their names printed on your shirts or your hoodies or anything like that, or links to their social media pages on your website, or some promo you're doing. That's a sponsorship because they're getting something in return. A donation is someone just giving you money because they want to. So we have clubs whose alumni make donations. We've had people's parents in the past. We've had a various number of things, but a donation, whilst it may not be as large an amount as a sponsorship may be, once you factor in that you're not going to have VAT taken off, it may be worth pursuing. So that's something to consider. This is really important. Obviously, the current situation in the world with COVID, we are asking that clubs, where possible, do not hold in-person fundraisers for the foreseeable future. This obviously, the whole social distancing and everything that's going on at the moment, actually doing something in person with all those guidelines, not only would it potentially break them, but having to meet all those criteria for your event to go ahead safely is a lot of work. We know what's going on with Freshers Fair at the minute, so to do any form of in-person event is going to be a lot of work to get going. So we are advising, please do not do those for the foreseeable future. If you absolutely had to do it, you can do risk assessments, and there's a lot of COVID safe protocols that we would want to see before we authorize it. So if you're absolutely desperate, you can get in contact and we'll speak to you about it. But yeah, where possible, please avoid it. So yeah, we touched on this earlier about reclaiming expenses when you're fundraising, but essentially if there's anything you need for your fundraiser, make sure you get it in advance and keep your receipts so you can follow the expense claim processes we've gone through in the past. Some people, some clubs, some societies have done larger things. Maybe they've hired big pieces of equipment like a dunk tank. Invoices can be made as payment for those following the processes we've mentioned earlier. Rag forms can be collected in person at the SU reception to pay money to charities, and we can also send you digital versions of these as well if preferred. And also, again, we're not advising the in-person fundraisers at the moment, but if you did need a cash flow, see, we're leaving this in the finance training with the hope that in term 2 or term 3 that we may be able to do things like this. The SU finance team will provide you a small cash flow so you can give people change if you're selling things. So just work with us. We're always happy to support what you're doing, and quite often if you let us know in advance, we'll help advertise your event so more and more people know about it and you can raise more money. Yeah, Click, we do bang on about Click quite a lot, but it is the university crowdfunding program, and it's something that sports clubs and societies are really encouraged to get involved with. In previous years, yeah, it's made a huge difference to what clubs and societies have been able to do because of the monies they've been able to raise. Essentially, crowdfunding is lots and lots of people contributing money for a project or an event or some sort of task, and lots of people are funding, and eventually you reach a target. And the best part about it is the university, if you reach a certain amount, which in this case is £250, they will match fund that. So you've raised £250 between all of you. However, you've ended up with 500 because the university have match funded what you have done. There's a few things you need to do. You need to set a minimum amount to be raised within a 30-day period of time, and you have to provide some sort of little gift. I can't quite remember the exact word, but essentially, if someone were to donate £5, you may thank them on social media. If they were to donate £20, you might invite them to one of your club or society social events, things like that. But if you work, all the details for the Click projects are there if you follow click.hubbub.net, and also you can speak to the Click team who will help build your project from the ground up and answer any questions you have. But it's really important, really encouraged rather, that you do these, but it's also important you are aware that if you raise money through Click, you have an actual target, you have a reason, and therefore the money you raise has to be used for that reason. So if you raised £500 for a trip, that money has to be spent on that trip.
Cool. So paying money in, when paying any other money in, again, I've used the example of bake sale, then you can use the paying in form, which can be collected from reception. However, again, to mention COVID, paying any money into the SU should be done via bank transfer, just to help us be as COVID secure as possible. The bank details are there, so if you ever need them, then you can download this presentation, which will be on the resources page, and you can go across to this slide and get the bank details there. When you pay money into the SU's account, make sure that you use a reference that includes the club or society code. If you're not sure on your code, then just ask us, but a lot of the time they're simple codes. They're the 3-letter ones, so Badminton is BAD, but obviously don't assume your code, because sometimes, even though you might think it was like something really simple, sometimes it actually is not quite what you think it would be. So yeah, include that, the first name, initial, and surname, and the reason for the income. So if you're paying in some money for towards a kit, then you would just want to include that in there. So the example, maybe we've used Dom's name for that, but it'd be like Badminton, D King, and then kit. What also we suggest you do is just to email SU Finance as well, just saying who you are, how much your payment was for, what it was for, what society or club it was for, and then when the payment was made, just so they can find that easily on their records as well. And the same applies for any external organisations who want to make donations to you. Always remind them to state on the email that it was a charitable donation if it was just a payment made with nothing nothing expected in return. So it goes back again to what Lewis said earlier. If they are just giving you money because they want to just support what you're doing, then they need to state on the email that it was a charitable donation, and then you won't get taxed basically on that. You won't have VAT applied. Whereas if it was as Lewis said, if it was a sponsorship, then it will be.
Yeah, this is quite a straightforward one. When ordering equipment, the best thing to do is just to contact Blades or SU Socks, and we will do the order for you, following the invoice processes and everything that we do probably most days, to be honest. There's a lot of reasons. Again, it saves people having to pay out their own accounts and reclaim money and all the ag that goes through with that. But a lot of the time we have trade accounts, or we have suppliers that offer potentially discounts because we use them a lot, and we may be able to get a better deal, or likewise we know places that can source the equipment that you're looking at a cheaper price than you've found. So that there is a couple of different ways of doing it. My personal recommendation would just be to contact us and say, we've got this money allocated in our budget, or we know in our savings that we have this amount of money and we would like to spend it on this. Send us over as much detail as possible, so web links, the quantity of how many you need, if there's any products like specific, so what color it needs to be, is it a certain size, that sort of stuff. Much detail as possible, and send it over to one of those email addresses on the screen, and we will do the business for you. If you absolutely have to do it yourself, deliveries can be addressed to Dominic there. University of Essex Students' Union, again, is probably the most important of that. Otherwise, it may be passed around the university, various places, until it finds you. If you are doing a kit order, so leisure kit, training kit, that sort of stuff, and you want the order to be made from your club or society account, we will not make that order until there's enough money in that account to do so. What that means is, say 10 individuals within your club or society all want a jumper. Those 10 individuals need to pay their contribution for that jumper into the bank account that Jack gave earlier. Those details work perfectly before we make the order. Until that money comes in, we won't do the order, I'm afraid. There have been plenty of incidents in the past where orders have been made and people have either just said, no, sorry, I don't want that anymore, and the club or society are out of pocket, or they've actually got equipment without paying and sort of pulled a fast one. So please, yeah, it's quite a simple process to get it all sorted. The details are there, just put a clear reference and we'll sort it. Factor in VAT again. Jack mentioned it earlier, it's unlikely you're going to be doing stuff, ordering things or having people come in from abroad, but ordering stuff from outside the UK may be subject to import tax, and also is quite often going to be less secure than something ordered within the UK. We've had stuff seized before that we've paid for and never been able to get back. things like table tennis balls, like ridiculous things like that, we have had seized and never seen again. So best to order from a UK supplier if you can. Sports clubs don't pay VAT on anything deemed to be related to a sporting activity. But again, VAT rules, I'm not even sure I got my head around it totally, and I've worked here 6 years. So if you're not sure, just get in contact with one of us and we'll happily explain how the VAT applies to the order you would like to make, just so you don't underspend or haven't collected enough money from your members to make the order. So always happy to help. Yeah, next slide. Oh, we're coming to the end now, which is good, within the hour. So weekly reports, just obviously a reminder to double check them. Dom's mentioned on the chat, but these will soon be updated with this year's finances, whereas they're currently blank because of the changeover between the spreadsheets. Just another reminder to please look at those, and if there's any problems with them, get in contact with us. This is a bit of a disclaimer, but at any point during the year, any club or society member is welcome to ask the current financial state of their club or society, whether that's to you as the president or the treasurer or someone on your committee or to a member of staff. And we have a no bullshit policy at the SU, so we will be happy to share information when requested.
Cool. So final tips or things to recap. So stay on top of your finances, find out when people are claiming money and why, and just sort of always evaluate. Give yourself enough time to evaluate what you're buying, so that you can have a good look around everywhere and see if you can get things cheaper. Make sure, please, just when you're going through your expense forms, that you've done every box. Sometimes, especially when we're doing it online this year, sometimes on those the type forms that are on there, if you scroll on your mouse, sometimes it will skip a whole box, and you haven't realized you've done it. So just make sure before you press submit that you've filled out everything correctly. Try and give your members an idea of how the financial processes how they work. They don't need to know everything, obviously, and I'm sure they don't want to know everything, but sometimes some members really take an interest in how your money is spent, and the processes in which and how it works. So give them bits of information, and just be ready that people might ask for further information. And so just make sure you've got your head wrapped around all of this information. We said make sure you read your weekly budget reports. A really important one is do not keep money that has been fundraised in cash in a safe place. This should be a lot less likely to happen at the moment, obviously, because we're trying to ask you not to have cash from society events. Don't collect cash, just to make it all as COVID secure as possible. But you don't know where that money could end up, or who could know that you've got that money. So there's always a risk to your own personal safety, as well as just the safety of that money. If you have it, a couple of £100 just sat in your bag that you're waiting to pay in. So just try and avoid that as much as possible. Again, do not open any other bank accounts relating to the club or society in the club or society's name, because it is illegal. And yeah, be proactive. If your club or society needs something and you don't have the money, fundraise. You'll be really surprised at times sometimes when a club or a society has come to us and said, we want to put on this event, and we've asked how much will that event cost, and they've said £2,000-3,000, and they only have 200 quid in their account. So just be proactive. Have a look at, once the weekly finance reports start working properly, have a look about how much you've got, and sort of try and plan for how much you think you're going to need, so that you know how much fundraising you need to do. Yeah, so again, we have another time change on there, but it is midday on Tuesday. Just make sure all the stuff that you need paid is into us. Something that we didn't mention, I don't think we mentioned anyway, that international payments can take longer. And this is sometimes to do with the different type of bank accounts that are used. You might see often that if you have someone, I'll go back to the example of a performer coming in from abroad, they may include an IBAN number on an invoice. So in the UK, obviously we have a sort code and account number. Sometimes they'll provide you maybe with an IBAN number, which we can use, that's all fine. And sometimes, yeah, payments abroad or to bank accounts that are abroad have additional charges added to them. They're not put on by us, so we're not trying to make any money, but they are sometimes avoidable, sometimes unavoidable. So just make sure, if you want to know kind of how much a rough cost might be, then just ask us, because we don't want you to have £200 left and say that, yep, we'll pay this performer £200, and then you've actually got to have an extra 15 quid for an overseas payment. So if you're ever unsure of if you're going to have, if you're going to incur an extra charge, then just ask us. If your committee does not complete its obligations, then payments can be withheld, and club or society activity may suspend. So again, that's something that we don't really want to have to do. But if you have agreed to pay an extra £50 to a company for some equipment, and that you have accidentally or you have willingly signed into a contract without our permission, and we have no option but to pay that £50 that you don't have, then obviously your club or society will be in debt, and until we can get that money back, or until you can do some fundraising to get that money back, we may have to unfortunately suspend club or society activity. Thanks for sticking with us. Again, much like the core office training, I know that it is very text heavy and it's very boring at times. We understand that, but now is the time, if you do have any questions, to ask them. If you don't want to ask one here, obviously we've got our email addresses that you can send a question into. There's the chat function, which I'm sure Dom, Ray and Lewis have been helping out on. Again, I'm sorry to everyone that I can't access that. It's just to do with the recording. And there is the link that I mentioned earlier. It would take you to the exec help page. That whole page is being updated with bits of information at the moment, so apologies that you might be trying to access something but it's not there. But the video, the presentation and the questions and the answers that are in the chat will be available there as of probably sometime in the afternoon this Friday. You'll see as well that the core officer training from the other day is there, so please feel free to have a look through that one. But if you want to head off now, then please feel free to. Thank you for coming and taking this information in. It's going to be really important, so refer back to it at some other point as well. But yeah, ask away for any questions.